Man of Steel. Why am I still talking about this film over a decade after its release? Is there really anything left to discuss? This adaptation was the first time I actually liked Superman and felt any kind of connection to him. I loved seeing his struggle and search for personal identity, and I loved the exploration of the existential dilemmas that would arise from someone like him existing on Earth. But unfortunately, many others don't share that sentiment. Many are judgmental of his decision to kill Zod, some are critical of the destruction that happened during the Smallville fight, and others don't like the general tone and visual style of the film. But I think these complaints have been addressed in dozens of other videos. So in the interest of being original, I'll focus on 2 plot points that I haven't seen defended much. The biggest moment that I see mocked and memed online is the death of his father, Jonathan Kent. I think people misunderstand Clark's motives for remaining still. When recounting this event to Lois, he says,
"I let my father die because I trusted him. Because he was convinced that I had to wait. That the world was not ready."
Clark is a man of traditional values, and so it reasons that he would try his best to respect and listen to his parents, even if he also has some teenage rebellion, like we all have. So, out of fear for his son, Jonathan tells him to not intervene, and Clark listens to him. But why would Jonathan be so overprotective of a seemingly indestructible alien? Well, because he's his father. He's always been less worried about his physical well-being and more focused on his emotional one.
Did it hurt you?
You know they can't.
It's not what I meant. I meant, are you all right?
He doesn't want to see his son be outcast or hated by the entire world. In Batman v Superman, we can see elements of this hostility when the public blames him for tragedies and fear what he could be capable of. So it seems Jonathan's concerns were fairly valid. But okay, despite all that, people still say, why didn't Clark fly over there to save him? He is Superman after all. He could just fly over there and rescue him before anyone could see. Well, not yet he can't. At this point in life, Clark's never even flown before. He has no idea what he's truly capable of. In the even earlier flashbacks when he uses his powers to save people, he gets reprimanded by his father. He wasn't congratulated for risking exposure to save others, or applauded for doing the right thing. He was told that he has to blend in with everybody else.
Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
When he's being bullied by the kids, you can see that he's reading The Republic of Plato, showing that from an early age, he has a curiosity for ethics and a desire to figure out what justice means. So I think all of this creates an interesting internal conflict within Clark when he sees his father in danger. He's disobeyed his father's wishes in the past, but he can't defy him so directly. Seeds of worry and trepidation have been instilled in him his whole life. So in the moment, he's frozen while determining what the right choice is. It isn't until after the death of his father that Clark chooses to permanently ignore his advice. Realizing that your parents are just normal people that can be wrong is hard for some people to grasp, but he's learned a lesson and won't make that mistake again. And from what we see, he doesn't. He still has to bounce around from job to job while he's doing some soul searching and figuring out what type of man he wants to be and what type of life will result from that. But he never again will allow himself to stand idle when he has the ability to help. Going back to the death scene, some people have also said, okay, forget the fact that he's Superman. Why wasn't Clark the one who ran to get the dog? Even without his powers, he's younger and faster. And the answer, yet again, is that he listened to his father. His dad told him to get his mother to the overpass to ensure her safety. So in this high-pressure situation, his main concern is with her, and he makes a split-second decision to run back himself. Jonathan actually would have had time to get the dog and come back if the car door didn't jam on his foot. So I think the real question is, why did any of them want to risk their own life for a dog? Many people think of their pets as family members, and some will honestly say that they love their animal more than people. So while I certainly wouldn't do this, I know a ton of people who would. Most of the reasons for how Jonathan Kent dies ultimately boil down to his son trying to respect his father's wishes. and I think that internal struggle is a compelling one. I've seen some people online say that instead, his father should have died from a heart attack, like in previous iterations, showing Superman that he can't save people from the human condition.
All those things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him.
This is a worthwhile character moment as well, and I would love to see something like this explored further in subsequent adaptations. But I also don't want to see the same exact scenario happen over and over again. Exploring a misplacement of trust and faith also works for the character. Clark learns from his father's death that if he has the ability or opportunity to save others, then he has to try, regardless of the risk to himself.
We are now slave to the world engine.
Initiate.
Clark demonstrates this lesson later by surrendering himself to the Kryptonians, where he's way out of his depth and physically outmatched. Later, when he finds out their true intentions, he risks his life to fight Zod to protect Earth. This brings us to the other aspect of the film that I've seen some critique about, but haven't really seen defended before. Some people ask, why not use the world engine to terraform Mars or another planet in our solar system? One reason is that they need the codex for the Kryptonians' genetic code from Clark's body. The codex is the template for how each child was designed on Krypton. They all have predetermined roles and are only born for purposes of serving, so Zod needs those blueprints to create a new Krypton. But when he sinisterly appears to Earth and demands Clark be turned over, it's obvious Zod is a threat that can't be trusted or reasoned with. Zod also has some disdain towards Clark because of how his interactions with Jor-El ended, and after being exiled to the Phantom Zone. It's entirely possible Earth could be a better choice than other planets to terraform because it already has a functioning ecosystem that would only need slight alterations, and starting from scratch on a barren planet like Mars might not be possible. In Jor-El's explanation for how they cultivated other worlds in the past, he doesn't specify the requirements for how they selected planets. However, when talking to the Council about Krypton's imminent destruction, he does say,
"Look to the stars, like our ancestors did. There are habitable worlds within reach."
So this shows that for Kryptonians, there is such a thing as inhabitable worlds, and maybe Earth is just the best prospect for a new Krypton. In Batman v Superman, the way Lex Luthor is able to obtain kryptonite is because large remnants are found in the Indian Ocean where some of the terraforming had started in Man of Steel. But we don't know if the world engine can create precious metals and resources from scratch, or if it only transforms what's already there. So if they tried to terraform a nearby planet instead, it's a possibility that they would end up needing materials from Earth at some point in the future. The Kryptonian architects could also be planning on using all of our solar system's planets for resources. The old Krypton was highly advanced and likely required an abundance of geological wealth. They abused their home planet through resource depletion and environmental neglect, so much so that it exploded. And since they are using previous Kryptonian tech and doctrine to create this new planet, it's probable that they'll encounter many of the same problems as before. So, from Earth's perspective, having an alien species next door with this history would raise massive concerns about safety and would create a lot of military tension. And besides, the Kryptonians here look down on humans as a lesser class. They won't be very altruistic or concerned about our needs.
The fact that you possess a sense of morality, and we do not, gives us an evolutionary advantage.
It's realistically unlikely that both species would be able to coexist. We can't even always coexist with the variety of people we have here already, so these aliens living in harmony is an optimistic illusion. This unfortunately also answers the other question of asking, if Earth is really the best option for them, then why not just stay here as it is and have superpowers like Clark? Well, the governments here would be weary about inviting even more superhumans to stay on Earth. They possess a godly amount of power, and how they use it is based solely on the discretions of whatever their own ideology is. Can you imagine the massive risks and uncertainty of raising superior beings right next to the vulnerable humans? What's to stop a Brightburn or Homelander situation from happening? If one single Kryptonian steps out of line, they could cause detrimental damage to all of humanity, and this is a risk that I doubt we'd be willing to take. Zod himself also says that they don't want to have to spend years suffering to the change in Earth's atmosphere, the same way Clark had to as a child. Zod can adapt quicker because he was bred and trained as a warrior, but especially for any new Kryptonians who would be born, they would likely have to spend their early years in pain.
When you were a baby, I used to lay by your crib at night, listening to you breathe. It was hard for you. You struggled. And I worried all the time.
And if you're wondering if they would in fact still have superpowers on Earth, I think they would. They would still have our planet's yellow sun, and when the Kryptonians are in their suits, they have superpowers like Clark. It's only when their face shield breaks and they are exposed to Earth's atmosphere that they experience overstimulation. So it's possible their suits filter the benefits of the sun but repel the foreign atmosphere. In a best case scenario, they could use this technology to create isolated spaces for new Kryptonians to grow up, but they would eventually still need to get used to Earth's atmosphere. And since everybody on Krypton is bred for different reasons, they would each have different strengths and weaknesses that would make the acclimation vary in pain. This uncertainty and change of normality isn't what the Kryptonians want. Zod doesn't want a new life on Earth, he wants a new Krypton.
That is the sole purpose for which I was born.
He has a genetic inclination to serve Krypton and an apathy for other species. So even if he theoretically could form Krypton somewhere else, it's not worth the extra risk and delay to creating his new home. Any compromises of that would be a betrayal of his core principles. Man of Steel presents a version of Superman that I think really expands on the character and makes him relatable. The nuances in the relationship with his father and the apparently divisive religious allegories make it extremely rewatchable. I think because it takes itself more seriously, it opens the door to more criticism of the thematic and creative choices. But the longer I've sat with it, the more I've come to appreciate them. Thanks for watching until the end. If you want to support the channel even further, consider joining my Patreon. You can participate in monthly Q&As and get insight into what I'm working on next. And a huge thanks to those of you who are already over there. Thanks for watching my videos.